Hi, Paul Gerard from Price Accounting Services, back with another one of our videos in our business and entity matters channel. This one concerns business activity, installment activity, and other sorts of tax installments and payments explained. Yeah, it gets confusing. In an earlier video in this series, we addressed how tax registrations might be required, okay? And that occurs on an activity basis, or even an entity basis. And so the ATO issue an ABN that's linked to a tax file number. For example, a company, right? Then the entity will be issued with a business activity statement if it's registered for GST, okay? And we commonly call that a BAS, B-A-S, okay? The GST registration could even be cash or accruals, and it's an important issue we advise on at the time of registration to make sure it suits the cash flows and the recording nature, for example, the accounting nature of the business records. Because you don't want to necessarily be paying the GST on sales that they're made on an invoice basis if they haven't been paid, and that's why many businesses will choose to be registered on a cash basis, which is different to its accounting basis. A business might account for and still report for tax purposes on accruals basis, but GST is different, okay? The period for each BAS is typically quarterly, and so that will be September, ended, so July, August, September, December, March, and June. However, some can choose to report each month or even annually. Annually can give rise to some deferral and debts, and may not necessarily be recommended for all taxpayers, okay? But it is an option. Annual reporters may accrue a large unpaid amount on that basis, so in future years they then need to pay a quarterly instalment of GST on future BASs. So they may accrue a debt for the first 3 or 4, and then they will find after that period of time they will be assessed and pay an instalment, and then at year end they lodge a final year end one, and then there's a settling up and adjustment for anything that's owing. Okay, so entities that also pay employee wages and salary will also be registered for PAYG withholding. We covered that in an earlier registration video. Think of the old group certificate when we think of PAYG summaries, and that's the system, okay? Depending on these tax registrations, they may report and remit the tax withheld on the BAS once each quarter. Some may be registered to report monthly, particularly where the amount withheld exceeds certain thresholds. The tax office will move you from quarterly to monthly. And then they will also lodge an instalment activity statement in the other months. So July and August would be an IAS, September would be a BAS. So July and August will report and pay the tax withheld. September will report the tax withheld plus the GST on the BAS. Monthly payers typically must report and remit the tax by the 21st of each of the month, and then they get the 28th of the month for the quarterly BAS, if that helps. There are adjustments to these dates for tax agent supported quarterly lodgements. One further tax amount though you come across is PAYG installments. This applies to tax-paying individuals and entities, but commonly not trusts, as they don't themselves normally pay tax. Let's use the example of ABC Proprietary Limited, who reported a profit of $10,000 in 2021. And let's assume based on that there's $3,000 of tax was payable. The ATO may initiate PAYG installments after that lodgement and issue a letter advising them and welcoming to the PAYG regime, which is still PAYG installment regime, and they will then will be required to pay $1,500 per quarter in the new tax year. This would then be pre-printed onto the BAS or the IAS, depending on the GST registration basis. The company then can choose to pay this each quarter, even if their profit is expected to balloon well above the prior year. Okay? In 2022, tax returner will get a credit for the tax it pays on each quarter, and any under or overpayment becomes due or a refund is applicable. So there's a settling up at that point in time. During the 2022 year, the company may also consider its financial position, and if it's expected no profit is going to occur, it may vary the instalments down. And it can do that in two ways. It can opt out of or vary down to zero the present instalment, or it could reduce it down to an acceptable amount, or it can also claim back past amounts claimed in a former lodgement for that same financial year. So if it does that, then if it later just decides that no, we've varied down and oops, now the profit's coming back again. For example, let's say the profit is very seasonal. It may choose to vary down the first three and vary up the final fourth quarter. That's permitted. In fact, it would be required to vary up the fourth quarter to avoid any penalties, because if it varies to zero through all 4 quarters and then the final tax is is $10,000, then the ATO can query why instalments were varied and can impose penalties. Okay. A reminder too that the potential GST withholding instalments paid on the BAS, etc., must all be paid by the due dates. The ATO will enter into payment arrangements. Delayed lodgement is not recommended. Delayed payment is recommended. The ATO would rather you lodge and have a payment arrangement than you delay lodgement. The reason I often warn about late lodgement is the penalties. The penalties are massive. You think speed camera fines are good. $1,000 per return per 30 days can be imposed. Yeah, over $1,000. So it's hefty. The late payment may also attract interest. So payment arrangements, the ATO are pretty good with those. So always consider, if you want, you can go online, you can even make a request for the payment arrangement. Just bear in mind that a payment arrangement will be automatically invalidated if another document is lodged, creating a further debt. So by that I mean, let's say you lodge a quarterly BAS and you need 4 months to pay, well, let's say 3 months to pay. And by the time you get around to paying it, you haven't quite paid it off in full, and all of a sudden the financial circumstances changed and you can't pay that final quarter, and you've lodged another one, you are going to need to immediately make a new payment arrangement with the ATO because of the additional lodgement. So we hope that helps explain BAS, IAS and tax instalments and how the system works. And you will find, if you use us as your tax agents, we're going to assist and support that by providing you with copies of relevant notices and guidance and warning. However, the obligation to ensure that it's lodged on time sits with you. If we're not given the information, we can't be blamed for late lodgement. We need to be provided with sufficient time to prepare and lodge, and to ensure that your lodgement occurs on time. So the message there is just work with us and provide your informational notice that your information's ready if you're using Sage Accounting or some other process, and we'll jump on board and be able to assist you very quickly. Alright, so I hope that's helped, and do check out some other videos in this thread or any other of our channels. And if you've got any questions at any time, do come back to me. And otherwise, we'll see you in another video.